Hello, I'm going to give you everything you need to get started in English teaching abroad. You'll find special materials in this video that will get your first conversation course off to a flying start. This is based on 30 years experience teaching in middle schools, high schools, a polytechnic and private schools in northern Italy. My name is Andrew McEwen. If you want to teach English abroad, get serious about doing the job. I'll explain how to find a job later, but first you need to know what to do. Here's my first tip. Start with English conversation, not with English grammar. That will come later. Teaching a conversation class sounds easy, but it's easy to do badly. This video will show you how to do it well, how to get your students involved and interested. That's the theme of this first part. All the rest is in part 2. So how do you run a successful English course? These are the 4 keys. The activity must create a challenge for the students. 2. The students must fully understand the challenge before the conversation starts. 3. The students must do the talking, not the teacher. 4. The teacher has to get the weaker students to talk, not just the strong ones. Now to the specifics. To get you started, I've put together 3 examples for you to use. Each one begins with a video that tells a story. Each story focuses on a really involving problem that students have to solve. The students watch the video before the lesson. This creates a great basis for conversation in class because everyone understands the situation and the task. All this has been properly tested. I used these videos in numerous classes in 2 Italian high schools over a period of years. These videos are at 3 different levels. In each case, the vocabulary is clearly illustrated by the pictures, and the speaking is neither too fast nor too slow for the level. Each one is accompanied by a separate video full of detailed advice for you, the teacher. I'll give you all the details in a minute. Before we get to that, let me explain why I recommend you to start with conversation, not with grammar. 2 reasons. Firstly, conversation is what many state schools need, and in state schools you can find that kind of work, even with little or no previous experience. State school students never get enough time for speaking English. Grammar, vocabulary, reading, writing and listening gobble up all the available time. State schools recognize this, and many of them hire native tongue women and men to fill the gap. In part 2, I'll explain how to get that work. In my area, there's a real shortage of English mother tongue speakers, so some schools also accept non-native English speakers. Teaching a conversation class is a great way to learn how to hold a class. Once you've gained some experience, you'll be better placed to get work in language teaching. Good teaching focuses on the student's needs, not on those of the teacher. What does this mean for you, the conversation teacher? First, your job is to get the students speaking, not listening to you. Second, you have to care about your students. A little empathy goes a long way. Now let's look at the details. Once you've got your contract, and I'll explain how to do that in part 2, ask the school administration for a list of students in your class or classes. Use the list to make your own registers. Every class has its official register, but you'll need your own papers so that you can remember who was there and how they performed. For the first few lessons, it's a good idea to make a map of where each student is sitting. That will help you to remember the names. If you can call your students by name, that's the first step in creating a relationship. Next point, before your first lesson, speak to the staff English teacher of your class. She or he will give you a general assessment. Tell her that your students are going to work in pairs and that you need to pair strong students with weaker ones. Make a list of the pairs that she recommends. This is very important. Next, ask what the average level of the class is. In my area, a first-year high school class often starts at A2. That's a basic level, but there is always a mix of abilities. To understand what A2 means, go into www.cambridgeenglish.org and look for International Language Standards. Also, look at the materials your students are using, which should show the level. Let's assume that the level is A2. Ask the staff English teacher if you can go into her class a few days before your first lesson. Tell the students to watch The Mayor of Little Pity. You'll find it on YouTube. Here's the icon. This is pre-lesson homework. It's a murder mystery story about strange events in a small-town hotel. They should watch it more than once to understand the story. Some of the vocabulary is a little higher than A2, but the pictures and the context make the meaning clear. The challenge is to solve a 7-point mystery. They'll need to use their creativity and their English together. If the average level of the class is a little better than A2, close to B1, tell them to watch Capture a City. Here's the icon on YouTube. An emperor orders a general to capture a well-defended city. The general has a plan using a secret tunnel under the city wall, but it looks very risky. The first challenge for students is to improve the plan. Then they discover that this is a true story. The second challenge is to find out what really happened. If the class level is between B1 and B2, tell them to watch Martian Cliffhanger. Here's the icon. 12 young women are on their way to a skating race on an icefield crater on Mars when they run into a dust storm. The crater is a real place. The story is fiction, of course, but the background information is mostly true. The women are stranded on the edge of a 2,000-meter cliff. The challenge for students is to work out how they can save themselves and get back to base. Once you've chosen the video that has the appropriate level for your class, watch it yourself and also the separate video of teacher's notes. Start the lesson by putting the students into the pairs that the staff English teacher suggested. Then ask some questions to make sure that they've understood the story. You'll find these questions in the teacher's notes and also the answers. As the students reply, make a note on your map of where they're sitting to help you remember their names. Don't be surprised if some of the students have not done the homework. Tell them to do it for next week. Ask if anyone has come up with a solution to the challenge. If not, set a time limit and then call one of the pairs. Tell them to take turns in presenting their solution and ask the class to listen. Make notes of anything they say that doesn't fit the facts set out in the video, but don't interrupt their flow. When they finish, be generous in what you say. Remember that they probably haven't done an activity like this before. If they manage to express a coherent idea, that deserves praise. Don't focus on their mistakes. If their English is understandable, try not to correct it. Your instinct will be to correct, and the class English teacher may insist on it, but remember that your job is to draw the weaker students out of their shells. The fear of making mistakes inhibits many students. Correction may be unavoidable, but it won't unlock their tongues. If their English is not understandable, there's no choice. You'll have to correct, but never, never turn a conversation lesson into a grammar exercise. Try to get the class to comment on their solution. If necessary, prompt the other students with questions. For example, what did you think of their plan to ... The more conversation you can generate, the better the lesson works. Then call the next pair, and so on. It usually takes 2 full lessons to hear all the solutions, and sometimes more. In part 2, I'll explain how to continue the course after this first lesson. To wrap up this first part, here's a list of don'ts. Whatever you do, never go into a class and ask, "What shall we talk about today?" A serious teacher should have a proper plan. Secondly, never ask your students to talk about boring subjects like the weather or childish ones like pets. They did all that years ago. Never repeat the same topic with the same class, and don't talk about yourself. Thirdly, never shout and never lose your temper. The staff English teacher might disagree with this advice, but remember that she has much more authority than you, and she also has a much more difficult job than you. Fourth, never let the best students sit together. Always pair them with weaker ones. Fifth, never speak in their language, not one word, not even when you're giving instructions. Finally, don't be daunted. Just remember that most people can become decent teachers. You don't need to be an alpha female or male. If you persist, it will all come right. The second video covers 8 topics. These are the first 4. 1. How to continue your conversation course after this first lesson. 2. Tips on classroom management and the role of the staff English teacher. 3. What you need to know about behaviour. 4. Whether you need qualifications such as TEFL. And these are topics 5 to 8. 5. How to find work. 6. How much work you can hope to get. 7. How much freedom you'll have to run your lessons the way you want. 8. How to detect students who use AI chatbots to do their homework. Over the years, I tried several ways of running a conversation class. This video has presented the one I think is best, and I'll conclude part 2 by explaining why it beats a more traditional approach. See you there.